welcome back to another tutorial for the Minecraft Create mod, where we're going to be using gantries in order to farm these, some lovely cocoa beans. And this is the little farm we're going to be making today. So what have we got going on? We have got a shaft up at the top there, which has got a gantry running on it, which is this little box you can see here with the cog up at the top of it. This will run along that shaft to the end and then come straight back again. This is a fully automatic farm, you don't need to do anything else with it. And then in the centre of this though, if I just show you, it has got these 6 harvesters and they are going to harvest these cocoa pods as they move down, and they will replant them as well. These are being watched by these observers that you can see at the top, and they've got redstone links on the top of them which are going to tell that gantry when it needs to move. I can sort of signify that if I just remove this one and then replant it. Here come those harvesters that you can see. It'll harvest away that pod and immediately replant it with a little green one. Once that gantry reaches the end of the line, it will pause briefly with it sort of just facing into the end of its line, and then it will retract and go straight back to its beginning position again. So as I say, it is a fully automatic farm as well. It will automatically unload its beans for you. They will appear in this little chest just here. So it does have 2 slightly more technical bits of kit. We have got those little redstone links, which I'll show you how to set up, and also the sequenced gear shift as well. And while they look fancy, they are really simple. So don't let them put you off making this farm if you're brand new to this mod. And so let's have a little look at what we need in order to make this farm. So the whole thing runs off of one water wheel. That's going to be connected up just using some shafts. You are going to need a couple of storage interfaces. As I say, we are going to be storing everything automatically. And obviously in a survival world, you're going to need to have jungle logs, and you're not going to get anywhere at all if you don't have any cocoa beans yet. Other than that though, most of the items here are reasonably cheap and early game. You are going to need brass for the sequence gear shift and for the redstone links, and you are going to need redstone for things like the gantry shafts. Other than that though, nothing is too difficult to get hold of. And the first thing you're going to want to do, other than obviously deciding where you want your farm to be, is to put down your water wheel anywhere that's going to be at the start of where your gantry is going to be beginning from, because that's what's going to be powering it. So place down your water wheel, knock out a couple of the blocks alongside it so you've got somewhere to put your water. I'm not going to put that in right now though, because we'll build up the farm first. But I'm going to build up 4 shafts coming out from the water wheel. Just up like so, and then on the top of that place down a little vertical gearbox so that its shaft is pointing in the direction that you want the gantry to be running along. Onto that then you can place your sequenced gear shift, and then you're going to run the gantry shafts out from that. And how far you have them going depends very much on how big you want your farm to be. And just to point out, this particular farm is about 20 blocks long, and it does produce a fairly huge amount of cocoa beans. Cocoa beans grow really fast in this game, so they are highly productive. In a single player world, I would probably make it about half of this to be honest, and that would be plenty of cocoa beans to keep me going, unless for some reason I wanted to make a mountain of chocolate. For now though, we'll make this one about 20 long as well, just to keep it the same. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That'll be absolutely plenty. This will be enough to feed an entire server. And from here we can then add anything really onto the end, any old building block, just so that our gantry doesn't look like it's floating up in the air by its shaft, just to make it look a little bit better I suppose. From this point though, that is the shaft side of things completely done. We just need to build up the actual gantry itself. So if we have a little look at our farm, we can see we only need a 2 wide gap in between these pillars of cocoa pods for our little gantry to run down. It is a very small and slim machine. From here then, what we can do is we can come up to the start of our gantry shaft and we can place our gantry carriage right up against it. It will automatically connect itself on. You can see it's got these little cogs sort of on either side, which is used to wheel itself up and down, I suppose. On the base though, you'll also notice that it's got a little sticky pad for us, and up against that we're going to place down just some oak planks which we'll be able to put our harvesters on. So build up a 3x2, as you can see just there, and then against that place down your mechanical harvesters all across it so that they're facing in the right direction of course. And on the back we can then place a chest that is going to be able to store the beans temporarily as they are harvested so that they can be put into the normal storage. And in order to get them into the normal storage, what we can do is we can place down a portable storage interface so that that hole is pointing in your direction. Place any old block up against it. We're going to just use that as a placeholder for now. and then crouch and place another portable storage face going directly into it, so that when we remove the placeholder, you can see that we've got those two holes facing into each other, and that's what's going to allow them to connect in the middle and transfer the items across. Underneath this second of our storage interfaces, place a chute coming out the base, and it needs to go into a chest, and that's where all of our beans are going to get stored. Next thing we need to do is make sure that all of this is going to move together once the gantry starts to move. So what we can do is we can right click with our super glue up there on that little portable storage interface, and then as we drag this around, you can see we should be able to get the whole thing quite neatly into one big green box so that everything is connected together. You'll notice it's got this sort of paler edging around it. So long as everything has a pale edge, it's all connected and it's up against the gantry shaft up there, everything should be moving just fine for us. And the next thing we're going to do is actually build up the farm itself. So obviously we don't want our cocoa beans to be trying to grow inside these harvesters when that gantry has come right back to its starting position. So we need to offset by one block just there before we start placing our pillars for the beans to grow on. We can do that on either side of our little harvester, and then we can build that up by 3 blocks. And on each of these, we're going to be able to plant down our pods just like so. Now from here, you can actually fill up the whole thing. You can go absolutely crazy and have 2 completely solid walls of beans running along, and they will work just fine. They'll be able to grow. But with them on both sides, it does start looking like a bit of a tunnel, if you can imagine in your world all that built up. And so personally, I like to leave a gap in between them. I know technically it's a waste of space, but I do think it looks much nicer and a little bit more reasonable if they're grown with a gap between them. So in this case, we've got a 20 long shaft, and what we can do is we can put in 7 rows of our pillars. You do need to leave a gap at the end where there isn't any cocoa beans growing. And the reason why is because as the gantry moves down, it is going to stop at this point. So it's going to have its rollers up against the wall, then you're going to have the blocks on which those mechanical harvesters are placed, and then you're going to have the chest and the portable storage interface layer. If you happen to have any beans growing in this area, for example, what you'll find is that if they were here, they would get cracked off as soon as that machine stops, because when it stops, it becomes full blocks again, and it's recognized as such. When it's moving, though, it's not. It's able to sort of ethereally drift through things as you see. But if it stops in front of any of these beans, it will break them and it won't replant them. So just leave a gap of about 4 or 5 blocks before you come to the end of your shaft and you'll be absolutely fine. Once it's all put down then, we can just fill this all up with beans and then we will be good to go. Okay, so this is actually all of the sort of physical building side of the farm actually done. What we need to do now is actually get it working. And so what we can do is we can activate our water wheel. Really doesn't matter which way you get it turning because we're going to be controlling it using this little gear shift up at the top. So this is a little sequenced gear shift, and what that means is we can use this to make our gantry go down and then stop and come back again without having to muck about with changing the direction of the water or anything like that. And the way that we do that is to come to our gear shift. With an empty hand, you can right click on it and you'll open up its little HUD as you can see. And so it's got these inputs that we can use to control it in a sequence, funnily enough given its name. What we can do though, if we come to the first one, we can see we've got our options. We can turn it by an angle, so literally just turning it 90 degrees. We can turn it to move a piston pulley or gantry, which is clearly the option we're going to be going for. We can put it on a time delay and we can tell it to await another redstone pulse. But obviously we're going to be turning it to move a gantry because that's what we're doing. Distance, well, we know that 1 block is roughly a meter and this is a 20 block long shaft, so we must need it to move about 20 meters, so we can set that. And right now it's only operating off one rather slow little water wheel, so we're going to set it to forwards, but we're going to double the speed. And then we're going to do exactly the same for the line below. So what we'll do is we'll come up and we'll give it the option to turn a gantry. We're going to tell it to go 20 meters. Obviously at the moment we've got it running forwards, we need to turn around and come back to the beginning again, so what we'll do is we'll say double speed reversed. So it's going to travel down to the end of the line, it's going to stop, and then it is going to come straight back again for us, all nice and automatically. And then if we click the OK, the first thing you'll notice is that it doesn't do anything at all, because this is a piece of redstone, so it needs to have a signal put into it in order for it to start off. We can test it though just by using a lever. So if we crouch and then click the lever onto there and we activate it, it should set our farm off. So at the moment these two are going to have a chat with each other because I heard it harvest something just then, but we can see that it has started to move. And if there are any grown-up beans down here yet, it will be able to harvest them as it goes. I think it was a bit young, these ones haven't actually grown up just yet, but we'll make sure it comes to the end and then it stops and it goes back without doing any damage to these pods. There he comes. We've reached the end. You know what? I could probably put another one just there if I wanted to as well. I could have this grow even more beans. I'm not going to though. I'm going to leave that as a gap for now. As you can see though, it has stopped. It's not working anymore, but it is slowly travelling back to its starting position for us, which is great. The only thing about this, of course, is that I don't want to have to flip a lever every single time I want this thing to go and harvest. I want it to do it nice and automatically for me. And that is where our observers and redstone links come in. So an observer is obviously something that watches something else, and then when it detects a change, it will send a redstone signal. Perfect for our little sequence gear shift over there. We want it to be detecting growing up of beans and then telling the farm to activate. So what we can do is we can come to a bean. This one that's grown will be just fine. We can hover over the top of it with our observer, jump and click, and it'll be able to place it so that it's looking at the bean from down there. There he is, he's giving that bean a jolly good staring at, but it's emitting a redstone signal out the top of it. And onto that what we can do is we can place a redstone link. What this is it's like a little tiny transmitter. It's got a little antenna sticking out just there, and it will be able to send a redstone link from here to another one, which I'm going to place on that sequenced gear shift, completely wirelessly. It's Bluetooth for redstone, basically. It will send the signal over there without me having to link up all sorts of redstone dust and things. So what I'll do is I'll just run over. I can run along this shaft. I'll take off this lever from the side. We don't need that anymore. I'm just going to place this little redstone link right on the very top of this sequenced gear shift. You'll notice at the moment the two of them are identical. That's because right now they are both sending signals. I actually need this one to receive a signal. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to crouch down next to it. I'm going to make sure I've got an empty hand, and then I'm going to right click anywhere on this little redstone link. And you'll see it has sort of sprouted itself a little tiny cell dish that you can see just there. This means it is now receiving a signal rather than transmitting one. So it's going to be able to receive a signal from that observer, despite the fact it's all the way over there. What I want to be able to do though is I want to make sure that this receiver is only receiving a signal from this observer. If I've got other farms in the area that are also using these redstone links, I don't want them all to be talking to this farm. And so what we can do though is we can couple them together. It makes sense to use something that relates to the farm, so I'm going to use cocoa beans, but you can see that it's got a little input in the top of it. Frequency 2, frequency 1, depending on whether you're looking at the blue or the red input that you can see there. But what you can do is you can add in, say, cocoa beans into the red one, and then I'll go back over to this signal output, and I'll put cocoa beans there in the output as well. And now these two will only speak to each other or anything else that has got this cocoa bean over that red input. So for example, at the moment, if I put cocoa beans in both, these two now couldn't speak to each other because they have different frequencies that they're talking on. I'd have to put cocoa beans on this one as well. Only if they're the same will they be able to talk, and they can take absolutely anything as an input. It doesn't have to make sense. I could have put a gold block there if I wanted to, but usually having something that makes sense is better. And so, in light of that, I think I'm going to set this to, instead of being cocoa bean, which might mean chocolate, I am actually going to set this to be cocoa bean and junglewood. And if you want to remove one of these frequency inputs, you can just right-click it with an empty hand, and you'll just take it straight out, and I'm going to swap that one for junglewood. So it's cocoa bean on red, growing on junglewood. That makes sense to me. And I'll just swap this one over as well. So I can just take this blue one out. What I could do is I could just, again, empty hand, remove that and replace it with the junglewood. There we go, these two will still be chatting now. And so now though, if I hop down here and I come over to my observer, if I remove this cocoa pod, what should happen is it will transmit its redstone signal. That goes into our little redstone link. It speaks to the sequence gear shaft, and that's going to be able to set everything off for us. Let's see if it does it. So if I just click that one out, We can see the shaft has started rotating. And yep, here comes the farm on its way, happily destroying and replanting our cocoa beans as it goes. Here, that is in fact the entire farm completed. The only thing you might want to do is if you want it to fire more or less frequently, you can of course have more than one of these observers. This farm has 2. It just means that there are 2 beans being watched at any one time, and should either of them grow up, the farm will start to come in this direction. And so long as you have all of your redstone links, the ones which are on the observers and the receiver over there, as long as they all have exactly the same frequency input, you'll find they're all quite capable of talking to each other. And that is it though. That is literally everything you need to do in order to make this little cocoa bean farm. And of course you don't have to grow cocoa beans with it. It works just as well with sugarcane or with kelp if you put it in water as well. Harvesters will harvest practically anything. They don't really care whether they're attached to a gantry or a rotary machine. As long as they go over a crop, they are happy. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial. Happy Minecrafting everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye!